For over 70 years, there's been this persistent whispering in the background of just about every major UFO event. We're talking about these shadowy figures who just appear. They ask questions, they issue warnings, and then they're gone. They are, of course, the men in black. And in this explainer, we're going to break down the pattern of their appearances to really try and understand their role in controlling the UFO narrative.
Okay, let's really dive into this because this is the central question, right? Think about it. They never show up before something happens. They're never there during the event. They only ever arrive afterward. And it really seems like their whole job is to manage the witnesses. So who are these guys and what is their real mission?
So yeah, at its core, this is the classic definition you'll find everywhere. But as we're about to see, the reality that witnesses describe is so much stranger, so much more complex than just some government agents in dark suits. It's a phenomenon that kind of blends this high strangeness with what, on the surface, looks like official authority. To really get a grip on the MIB, you have to go back to the beginning. We're going to start with the two cases that basically wrote the playbook for every single encounter that followed. These are the stories that established all the key traits and tactics that we see again and again.
It all kicked off with the Mothman, this giant winged creature with glowing red eyes that dozens of people saw. But almost immediately after those sightings began, a second, arguably weirder phenomenon started to creep into the community. These meticulously dressed strangers who, well, they just didn't quite seem human.
And this eyewitness account from Linda Scarberry, wow. It just cuts right to the heart of how incredibly strange the phenomenon is. We're not just talking about men in suits here. This is a description of something that looks human, but has these fundamentally unsettling physical qualities.
And these traits, they form a really consistent pattern. It wasn't just one person. Multiple witnesses in Point Pleasant reported the exact same details. The strange, see-through skin, the unblinking stares, and these bizarrely formal yet super awkward social interactions. And get this, the cars they drove? Police checked the license plates. The plates didn't exist. But, this whole pattern didn't even start in Point Pleasant. We have to rewind the clock even earlier, to 1953. There was this guy, Albert Bender, who was a true pioneer in civilian UFO research. He created the International Flying Saucer Bureau. He was connecting dots all over the globe, right up until he was forced to stop.
I mean, just look at the timeline. The speed and the severity of this intervention were just startling. Within a year of founding his organization, Bender was visited, and these were not government agents serving him some papers. These were figures who reportedly communicated with him telepathically, filled his room with the smell of sulfur, and just terrified him into complete silence. He went from this passionate investigator to a man who was, in his own words, scared to death, all in just a few months.
So we've got these strange, almost non-human enforcers. But the story gets even more complicated when the line between these bizarre visitors and actual military personnel starts to get really, really blurry. It suggests a coordinated effort to make evidence just disappear.
This next case starts with a very proactive witness. This woman, Carolyn Abbott, sees a flaming, anomalous object streaking across the sky near her home in Idaho. It doesn't look like a meteor, so she does what very few people would do. She gets in her truck and actually gives chase. So she's chasing this thing, she rounds a bend, and bam, she's confronted by military officers with their guns drawn. Now this is where the story takes a sharp turn. These officers weren't from a local base. In fact, the nearest one was 84 miles away. So how did they get there so incredibly fast to secure a remote location? And what in the world were they hauling away under a giant tarp just a few days later? It really points to a rapid, aggressive, and pre-planned response.
Now, perhaps the most famous case of evidence suppression is the Calvine photo. Back in 1990, two hikers in Scotland captured this absolutely incredible high-resolution image of a diamond-shaped craft just hovering silently with a military jet in the background. By all accounts, it was undeniable proof, the smoking gun.
And right here you can see the mechanics of control in action. The hikers, they did everything right. They got the photo, they took it to the press, but then the system just moved in. The Ministry of Defense confiscated the evidence, the newspaper killed the story, the photo was completely buried for over 3 decades, and most chillingly of all, the two witnesses were never heard from again.
But look, this isn't just some historical phenomenon from the Cold War era. The whole Men in Black archetype actually appears to be adapting, changing its appearance and its methods to fit right into the modern technological landscape.
So let's jump forward to a 2019 account that popped up on Reddit. 2 teenagers in Queens see something genuinely strange, this orange lightning that seems to be forming shapes
almost like it's writing in the sky. And within minutes, you guessed it, just like in all the other cases, the visitors arrive.
And the direct comparison here is just fascinating. The MIB of the 60s, they wore these outdated, ill-fitting suits and drove old Cadillacs, but the visitors in Queens, they were wearing modern tactical gear, compression shirts, and military pants. One of them was even carrying a laptop, just silently typing away. This suggests the phenomenon isn't static. It's like a chameleon, changing its appearance to blend into whatever the current era is. The core mission of intimidation and questioning is exactly the same, but the disguise has been updated for the 21st century.
So, after looking at all these cases, spanning 7 decades, a very clear and, frankly, a pretty disturbing pattern starts to emerge. We can really start to connect the dots and see the consistent strategy that's at play. I mean, think about it. The locations are different, the witnesses are different, the decades are different. But the fundamental tactics of the men in black, the arrival after the sighting, the intimidation, the unnatural disappearance, all of that remains the same. Shockingly so.
So what does this all add up to? Well, it's a 4-step playbook that we see time and time again. This is the big takeaway. First, they only show up after a sighting. Second, they exhibit these bizarre, non-human behaviors that seem designed to unnerve the witness. Third, they deliver a very clear message. Do not talk about what you saw. And fourth, they disappear in a way that just defies any logical explanation. This is their operational signature.
We can see a really clear effort to manage, to suppress, and to control information about these unexplained phenomena. But it leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? If they are the enforcers, who are they working for? Is it a human government, or is it something else entirely? Whose story are they trying so incredibly hard to keep hidden?